Anson Cheung, welcome to the work item. So good to have you here.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be here.
I want to start with probably the question that a lot of folks might have, and that is, what are you up to these days? You are the first industrial designer that we ever had on the work item. So tell us more what you're doing these days.
Wow, that's really an honor to be the first on the podcast. I am currently working as an independent industrial designer in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, for the last 10 plus years or so, I was working at an agency, a design firm called Bold Design, and they are, most well known for products like the Nest thermostat, GoPro cameras, Roku streaming players, and several other technology products that you might even have in your house. After 10 years of being there and becoming a partner in the business and helping to grow the company over several years, I decided to take a new path and kind of see what else I could do with this career. And I decided to go out on my own. And so now I'm basically a one man agency doing industrial design work in sort of the same area, working on technology products, but really getting closer to the craft again, doing a lot of the design work myself rather than managing a team. And also experimenting with doing stuff on the internet, kind of similar to what you do. I'm experimenting with content creation and doing things on LinkedIn, and there I've kind of built a small but engaged following that I interact with pretty much daily. And I'm excited to see where things go. I'm not really following any sort of plan. It's a little bit experimental. The whole last year was pretty free form and kind of trying things and seeing where they go, not really trying not to be super attached to the outcome, and then just trying to make ends meet and pay the bills in the meantime.
Now, for somebody as uninitiated as me, tell us more. What is industrial design, and how is it different from any other design that is out there? Right, because there's quite a few design disciplines. I would say. How's industrial design different?
So, industrial design is really the design of manufactured physical objects. And I think nowadays you might hear a lot more about product design, and what people mean when they say product design these days is really digital product design. And that's often a sore spot for industrial designers because they feel like that the title was stolen from them. I try not to engage too much in that debate because I don't really think it's that productive. And honestly, these days, when you're talking about products that people interact with on a daily basis, probably you're interacting with more digital products. Maybe not more, but maybe the same amount of digital products and physical products. So I think it's a title we can share and not something we have to fight over. But yeah, so industrial design is really a profession that emerged in the 20th century with the rise of industrialization and mass manufactured products. And this job came out of it where it was someone's career to shape these products and think about how they would look, how they would be used, how people can have better experiences through using these products that are considerately designed. So I think the way that it's different from other design professions like perhaps digital product design and graphic design is that it's very physical. You're looking at real world objects. You're a lot of times you're working with your hands, and you're thinking about how this design will manifest in the real world eventually. So there are a lot more constraints that you're dealing with. When you're doing digital product design, you can kind of change things on a whim. You can move pixels around freely. You can just have a different product tomorrow than you did today. But with industrial design, you're really committing to the physical incarnation of the product. So when you ship a product, you really don't have a chance to upgrade it or update it. And if you made a mistake or if you made a bad design choice, that's going to stay with that product until it ends up in a landfill somewhere or recycled or something. So I think the process is different. You are maybe committing to things more sequentially and more methodically, and there's less fluidity in being able to update things, and that leads you to a certain design process where you're kind of narrowing down your design funnel as you go more clearly. And I think it can be a little bit more risk averse because you're not going to commit thousands and thousands of dollars to creating injection molds for the plastics, for the physical parts of the product without knowing that it's going to be something that sells and something that people are going to like. Whereas I think, with SaaS products, with digital products, you can just kind of, put a MVP out there and see what people think, upgrade it, change it over the next several weeks, and then, maybe release another version in some time. So I think there are differences, there are pros and cons, and I think it really depends on a little bit on your personality type and your interests. For me, I really prefer working with physical products, and I've always liked crafting things with my hands, and seeing things in three dimensions really seems to appeal to me more than moving things around on a screen. So yeah, I think those are the major differences, and I don't think one is better or easier or you know more. Well, I think digital design is probably more profitable these days, but yeah, I think it's really a personal preference.
I find the comparison interesting because you just mentioned something that you don't think one is easier than other, but I'd say like at least one of them is more accessible, right? Like if somebody wants to learn digital design in the sense of you're designing a website, a mobile app, get a Figma subscription or get some tool that does it for you and you can start iterating and learning kind of the ropes. It's a bit harder probably for industrial design because like how do you learn to craft things with your hands, physical items specifically?
Yeah, I think there is a slightly higher barrier to entry, and I think that is why there are a lot more self-taught digital designers than there are industrial designers, because it really does benefit from a structured environment in school with a lot of the physical materials and equipment that you need to, really explore things three-dimensionally. But I think that, and also there's a lot of expensive traditionally there's been a lot of expensive software involved in the industrial design process. 3D programs are not cheap, but I think that is kind of changing uh, in recent years. Like, I think at the base level, the only thing you really need is pen and paper and some way of making things physically. And that can, you know, a lot of times, even professionally, we're doing things with our hands using paper, hot glue, cardboard, just gluing things together and making prototypes. They don't have to be fancy, they just have to illustrate how you might solve a design problem. So the barrier to entry might not be as high as people think. And also, the introduction of cheaper, maybe subscription based software is also helping. And there's even free software like Blender. Blender is not perfect for industrial design for various technical reasons, but it's a fine starting point for a beginner. And it's free. You can just download that and start exploring shapes in 3D. Um, 3D printers are cheaper than they've ever been. It's insane how little money you can get a 3D printer for. Like, I think some out of the box solutions that you don't have to fiddle around too much with on Amazon are like 100 to 200 US dollars. And if you are willing to DIY a little bit more, you could probably make one for even less. So those things are those barriers are coming down. And back in the day, if you were an industrial designer working professionally, you would really need to invest in, or your company would need to invest in CAD software that would cost thousands and thousands of dollars. But these days, it's not as clear cut of a requirement, especially with open interchange 3D formats like step files. Like, it kind of sometimes it doesn't even matter what software you're using as long as the result is usable. So I think it's a great time to be getting into industrial design. And I don't think the barrier to entry will ever be as low as digital design, just purely for the fact of physical matter is harder to manipulate than pixels. But it is cheaper than it's ever been to get into the craft.
For yourself, what bootstrapped your own interest in industrial design? Like, what was the catalyst to say, "Yep, that's what I want to build a career around"?
So for me, I started enjoying drawing very young. At a very young age, I just liked to doodle, and my parents encouraged me. They sent me to drawing classes. My dad would sit and draw with me from time to time, and that really became what I did in my free time. I also really liked to build like model kits, like model planes, model ships, and stuff like that. And that then translated into kind of trying to build things myself from scratch, like using scraps of wood to like make a boat, or like using some metal tubing to make some kind of contraption. And then in secondary school, I went to an international school in Hong Kong, and they actually followed the British curriculum. Um, and in the UK, they have a subject in secondary school that is actually mandatory until like ninth or 10th grade. It's called design and technology. And the UK has a pretty strong tradition of industrial crafts and making things, and that's really where the industrial revolution began. So they've kind of carried that through into their education system. And I was lucky enough to benefit from that, because when I was exposed to this subject in school, where it was really like shop class mixed with a little bit of design. So it was like learning how to make things in the wood shop, and then learning about how designers worked and how manufactured products were made. And I really was exposed to the fact that this could be a career, which is rare. A lot of people that I've talked to in the field, they haven't they didn't even hear about this as a career option until like they were in college, or sometimes even after they graduated with a different degree. So, I don't think it's as developed in America, the idea of becoming an industrial designer, or that things, you know, are designed by designers and you can be one. So, I was lucky enough to be exposed to it really early on in my teenage years, and then once I learned that this was a job that you could do, then there was really no turning back. I didn't think about doing much else, because that's what I like to do anyway, so why not turn that into my career? And it seemed like I was decent at it in high school. So, yeah, I decided to go to design school and develop that passion and learn more about the craft, and then eventually became a professional. And that's a pretty linear straight shot. I don't think that's typical of people in my profession. Like I said, like a lot of people take detours. So I wouldn't say that people should model themselves off that path. Like I think it's okay to find your way to design any way that, aligns with your life. But that was just what happened for me.
I find that being decent is a little bit underselling it because you work with some pretty big brands on some pretty massive projects, which kind of leads me to the next question is I think a mark of any kind of good designer from the folks that I've worked with is usually developing a very good individual design sense. What helped you develop that? Like, what resources or what starting points helped you develop that own individual style that you've been applying through kind of your career, the different projects?
I think that is a really good question and something that designers often ask, especially younger ones. It's really kind of a squishy subject because the matter of taste is so subjective. But for me, I think I really did not have great taste until I started working professionally and had people more experienced than me to learn from. So when I started working at Bold Design, my first real design job that I then ended up staying at for over 10 years, I was working with the founder of the firm, Fred Bold, and he at that point was already a very established designer. He had done the Nest thermostat. That was primarily his work. And so just having a mentor, being able to work with them side by side, learning from them, you know, hearing about what is bad and what is good and absorbing that on a daily basis was probably the thing that led me to having the taste level that I have today. And at some point, you also have to start to develop your own framework for evaluating design. And I think a lot of designers, they the thing that maybe they struggle with is knowing how to look at a piece of design and talk about it meaningfully and think about what's good about it and what's not good about it or what they personally like and what they don't like. So I think some part of it is also having those conversations with yourself and looking at things that you admire, like what is a design that you really like, and try to articulate why you like it, and what is a design that you really don't like, and try to articulate why it doesn't appeal to you. And I think over time, just the combination of learning from others and then also developing your own sense by constantly engaging in kind of a critical analysis of the designed world around you, that's how you get to a level of taste that, you can then own and also helps you in your day-to-day professional work.
If I'm hearing correctly, there's a lot of value in having almost like a network, whether a formal or informal one, where you can kind of bounce those ideas around. Because what you mentioned, for example, looking critically at a product, looking critically at a specific design, you would be in your own bubble, right? Like if you're operating by yourself and you don't have anybody to actually tell you if that feedback is like, is this the right channel you're going into, or is it something that's off?
Yeah, I think that is definitely true, and I think that's why designers earlier in their careers, I always encourage them to find groups that they can be part of, whether that is a professional design studio or a company that you're joining as an employee, or maybe it's just a group of your friends that are passionate about design, or now there's like so many online communities that you can be a part of, just other people to talk to about design, because you can't really you can't really learn if you're just keeping your thoughts in your head all the time and you have no one to bounce ideas off of. And I also think that's why going to design school is so valuable. And I know it's a very privileged thing to be able to go to like a 4-year design school and, you know, be able to devote that time and energy to like really just learning the craft. But for me, that was probably the biggest thing early in my development that helped to form the thoughts and opinions that I had about design and then helped to inform my career. Being around a group of people that are passionate about the same thing that you are is really important. And being able to just turn around and say to the person next to you, like, hey, what do you think of this? And have them tell you like, "Oh, it's good, but, it could be better in these ways," or, hopefully if they're really honest and you've done something that's total trash, they're like, "Well, I think you can do better." That is probably the biggest benefit to going to a dedicated design school, having that environment and those people around you. And you can kind of get that if you are plugged into the right communities online, but I think it's really hard. And then when you graduate into the professional world, a lot of younger designers ask me like, "Oh, how do I like start my own thing? Like should I like, just start selling my services as a designer?" And they look at what I'm doing now and I usually tell them, no, you should probably like find a design studio or a company that you really want to learn from and join that team so that you have the supportive professional environment to teach you on a daily basis and not just kind of end up lost in the weeds because you're just stuck in your own head all the time.
Which is also something that I feel like a lot of people miss, that the concept of the lone genius of like lock yourself in a room and work for 3 months and then come out with some like revolutionary product is more or less kind of a myth, right? Like you need that feedback loop that is a kind of healthy reality check.
Yeah, I don't think design is ever a solo pursuit. Even me, I work alone most of the time, but I'm working with my clients, and my clients usually are companies with teams, with engineers, with marketers, with project managers and business people, and we're in constant conversation about various aspects of the development of the product. So there is really no lone genius. Like, a lot of people idolize Steve Jobs as like this genius designer, and he wasn't even a designer. He did have a lot to do with the design of Apple products, but he had like an entire organization around him that helped him develop his vision. So I don't think that that lone genius in a room developing at least hardware products is a reality that has ever been seen.
I think that's something that you actually alluded to. I believe it was a book by Ken Kosienda that was talking about how they crafted some of the like the iPhone keyboards, the original like the autocorrect style electronic keyboard. And something that was kind of tangentially brought up is that Steve Jobs was not really the one that designed the iPhone as it is, right? Like he like they brought him prototypes and he basically had a good design sense to say like what is working well, what is not, but he was not the one that actually crafted the end-to-end story of it. And I think that's kind of gets lost in the common mythology, if you will, that there's these individuals that like they came up with this on their own and all these people just executed their ideas and look how well it came out. And the reality is not as binary.
Yeah, it's never that simple.
For yourself, how has it been doing, the industrial design work as a solo agency, basically an agency of one person? How is it?
It has been an adjustment. I obviously used to work with a team. I had a lot of people that I could rely on to do various aspects of the design work. I also had administrative support and then also I had my business partners that, I could get support from and, bounce ideas off of. And the way we structured our business was very collaborative. So there was a lot of working with each other. So now, as a solo operator, and I think I should clarify solo operator because while I am primarily the one doing all the work, I do work with some contractors to help with either some design work that I can't handle just on my own, or administrative support. So I think, when people hear solo operator or one man agency, they think I'm like doing every single thing. I do have help, but the way I structure my business is that it kind of is primarily me, and then I get help where I need it. So, with that clarification aside, the way that I work now is that I'm both doing the management and the delivery and the sales and marketing. So the difference is like I have to put on different hats more frequently, I think. And I think having the 10 plus years of experience behind me really helps in that regard, because when I switch, sort of mentally flip the switch, I can kind of more clearly identify what I need to focus on in that particular part of the work and be able to execute it in a more focused way. Whereas I think if it was earlier in my career, I think I would be getting pretty lost in each of these different roles. It also helps that I was a partner in a business previously, so I have a lot of experience running a business and understanding what's important, like, you know, making sure the billing is done on time is like probably one of the most important things, and making sure you have cash flow. And if I didn't have that experience, I might be struggling with a lot of the nitty-gritty details. And I think it might not even be possible to be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't have all that prior experience. So it is different. It's exciting because I think when you're operating on your own, you get more of a one to one effect. Like your inputs and your outputs are a lot more correlated, and you can choose where to invest your efforts, and you can see where it's paying off, and you you can adjust. You can very quickly, because you're not dealing with a team of people that you have to communicate out to. You can very quickly change directions or change focus or invest more in certain areas of your business and less in others. I'm really enjoying it because it really allows me to be experimental and just do things that I enjoy. And of course, there it comes with things that I don't enjoy. Like I don't think anybody enjoys doing accounting, but that's kind of the price you have to pay if you want to be a solo operator.
I also think that responsibility wise, when you're solo, it kind of basically like you either succeed or you fail. When you're on the team, that responsibility is kind of diffused across the many individuals, the many parties. So it's very hard to kind of like catastrophically crash and burn, if you will. And when you're solo, you're just kind of like, yep, it's on me. I gotta figure this out. And if I don't figure it out, it's kind of the end. Like there's nothing else.
Yeah, well, now that you say that, yeah, that is a lot of a lot
Not to
of
bring up
pressure.
more existential crisis in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you can take that one of two ways. You can say like, well, it's all up to me, and I can, I can make it work, or it's all up to me, and like it's crushing pressure. So I think it's both intimidating and it's freeing because there's nothing in your way really except yourself.
How do you de-risk that? Because to me, I have never worked as a solo founder or a company of one, and taking kind of the journey from I work at a established agency where I have more or less kind of a good career path to flying solo seems like a pretty like it's a bold move. Like it takes a lot of guts to do it. how like did you plan it in a way that like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I have a way out, or is it more like I'm all in and this is what I want to do?
I think because I have 10 plus years of experience behind me, the risk is pretty low. I also, well, I'll explain that. The risk is low because I could always get a job. If I wanted to, I could apply to a job. It might not be, you know, I was previously a partner at an agency, so I was kind of the top rung of that organization. Probably wouldn't be in the same level, but I could definitely find a job doing something that I enjoy in the design world, doing things that leverage my expertise in designing technology hardware. So I'm not too worried about if this doesn't work out because it might take 3 to 6 months, but I'll find something. And if I never try doing this on my own, I'll never know what could have been. So I think the risk of not doing it was even higher because, in 10 years, like you don't want to look back and say, like, oh, I wish I had taken that break in my career to start my own business. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I'm still currently relatively young. I'm like mid 30s and I don't have a family to support yet. So again, like the risk is pretty low. Like as long as I can make enough to pay the bills, like keep my uh accommodation and food and stuff, like it's not really, I don't really need to be bringing in like millions and millions of dollars to stay afloat. So, I think those things combined like give me reassurance that it's fine to be doing, all kinds of experimental stuff. It's fine to be on my own and trying this new path because, there's always a backup.
I think there is also the risk profile change that you just kind of alluded to that is extremely valuable for folks to internalize, and that is when you're young, you don't have a lot of commitments. It's easier to take these risks than when you're down the line, you have a mortgage, you have the kids to send to school, and it's like at that point, it's going to be much harder to say, like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and try running it for like 5 years solo and see what happens. Because, like, well, you kind of can't unless you strike gold right away. Um, but the risk that you're taking right now, you kind of have the risk profile of like, I right now at my stage in life, I can do this.
Exactly. And I think also you should, if you're thinking about doing this, you should think about the risk of not doing it. Like, do you want to look back on it and regret this decision when you can no longer take such a big risk?
And I mean, risks also nowadays, depending on where you are, they can be mitigated more or less, right? Like you said, like if you have some experience working previously, if you have a network that you can always fall back on, then you kind of it's almost like insurance that like if things go wrong, I can always fall back on something else. Like you're not going to be left high and dry and say like, yep, this is now the end of the journey. It's really not.
Yeah. And I think even if you're earlier in your career than I am, people, I think people's careers are more resilient than they think. Like you can change careers, you can quit a job, you can crash and burn in a startup, and just as long as you're willing to give it another go, like you can get up and try again. And I think people are understanding of failures. I think especially in Silicon Valley, in the culture that I'm steeped in, like everyone is like, "Oh, like fail fast," is what people always say. So, I think when you're younger, it can feel like it's super high stakes. Everything is like really high stakes, but if you think about a 40-year career from your 20s to your 60s, like that's a lot of time to make mistakes, take wrong turns, do stupid stuff that maybe you look back on and you're like, why did I take that job or why did I start that business? Like it's fine.
And I think it's also accelerated learning because if you work in, well, maybe not always, but like if you work in a team, in a larger team, you're more or less trying to kind of progress up the ladder that's been established. You're trying to kind of follow the pattern. When you're on your own, you kind of have to figure out things quickly. And not even on your own. If you work at a startup compared to a bigger company, right? Like the amount of learning that you kind of have to absorb quickly is probably coming in at a much higher rate than you would if it's a like somebody like I don't know, like IBM or some big company like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is definitely true, and I think my career has been an example of that, because when I joined the agency that I was a part of before, I was the 3rd employee. So there were only 2 other people. There's a founder and 1 other designer. So I was the 3rd one, and because of that, I think I was able to learn very quickly. I was able to grow with the company and then eventually become a partner in the business, because it is that accelerated learning, because you're in this small high stakes environment and things are moving quickly, and you're making mistakes and getting back up and doing that over and over again. And I think when you join a much larger company, or you know yeah, if you're trying to work at one of those large corporations, there are different resources available to you, but I think it can be less of a stimulating learning environment depending on your personality. Like, some people really don't like the lack of structure in like a smaller environment. So, I think it's really about knowing yourself and how you learn best.
No, it totally makes sense, and especially given the proliferation of a lot of these opportunities nowadays, like you have options. I mean, there's many companies, big or small. There's opportunities, like you said. It's despite the I guess current economic climate, it's still better than a lot of people assume it is.
Yeah, I think these days you're a lot more free to shape your career how you want. I think before, like even when I graduated college, it was less fluid. You kind of were expected to join a company and then work your way up. That was like sort of the standard path. But these days, I think you can kind of try all manner of different things. I do think there is value to joining a company, even, whether it's big or small, early in your career, because one thing that a lot of people say is that, learn on someone else's dollar. Like, when you start your own thing, you're kind of fully responsible, and, you're responsible for any big wins or losses. So you might find yourself, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, you might find yourself in kind of a bad situation. But if you join a company, there's usually safeguards, there's people that you can learn from, people who are going to protect you from totally going up in flames. And you can learn a lot by being part of someone else's business and being part of another structure. I know some people are like born entrepreneurs and they can never work for anyone else, and those people are going to do what they're going to do. But for most people, young designers especially, I would encourage them to join a company, a startup, a design studio, to really learn the craft before they try and jump off and do their own thing.
As you are basically like an agency of one, what do you do beyond just interacting with clients, with teams of engineers and product managers to hone your craft, to kind of absorb new insights and best practices? Like, what's the process like in evolving your own design knowledge?
I think one thing that I do pretty often is just stay up to date with the industry on LinkedIn and various design websites that I'm going to on a frequent basis. So just see what's going on in the industry and try to look at it through my own lens and see like what, what do I agree with that they're doing here? What do I not agree with? Do I think this is a good design? So again, applying that like critical thinking mindset that we were talking about earlier to things that are happening in the industry on a day-to-day basis. Um, I think another way that I do this, keep up to date with new insights and hone my craft is to explore other creative arts, like go to museums, look at photography, look at paintings, look at movies, see how other creative people execute their craft. I think that has a lot of input or a lot of impact on me as a creative person. And I think it's it's not it's not enough to just look at your own craft all the time. Like if I was just looking at industrial design all the time, then it sort of starts to become self-referential. It starts to become a little bit trend followy. So, yeah, I think looking outside your own craft and seeing what else you're interested in and just absorbing, even if it's not like conscious, like I think just being around other creative people and also creative work helps to influence your own work. Um, I try to keep up with technological developments. Like, obviously, AI is a huge thing in the design industry now. So I try not to like steep myself in it because that can be pretty distracting. But I just try to like, every once in a while keep on top of like what are the new tools that are coming out, what are people doing with the tools? Do I want to like experiment with using it in my own process? Or, do I think it has any value at all? Sometimes I see a lot of the AI stuff and I'm just like, well, this looks terrible. I don't really want to bring this into my own process. But it is amazing what people are doing and how the technology is evolving. So, yeah, I think just trying to keep up with things and apply a critical lens to it and taking what works or what you think might work for you and incorporating it into your own process. That's what every working creative person has to do.
Let's say somebody's listening to the show and thinks, "Wow, I want to follow in your footsteps now." What would be one piece of, let's say, unconventional advice, something that is maybe missed often that you'd say folks should follow if they want to break into or evolve in the industrial design space?
I think if you're trying to break into the industrial design space as a student or a non-designer, I think you really should look for education and mentorship. So that might be attending a design school, that might be looking for an online program, but I think in-person design education is probably the best way still to become a designer. I think that might be a little bit unconventional. I think everyone is like, "Oh, like you can just learn anything online these days. Like YouTube is free university, whatever." Like I think industrial design specifically benefits from an in-person collaborative educational environment. So, I would still recommend looking for some kind of physical design school that you can attend and definitely learn to work with your hands. Another thing that a lot of younger designers I think are starting to maybe maybe they mistake digital as a substitute for physical. Like they think that, oh, I can just do all this stuff in 3D and then press print on the 3D printer. But I think there's real value to working with your hands because people are physical beings. They relate to things on a physical level. So if you're not manipulating physical stuff with your hands, like, one thing that we did in design school a lot was like cutting foam and like shaving it with like sandpaper and stuff. I don't know if they even do that very much anymore in design schools, but I think that's a really valuable activity because being able to touch and feel things is something that you'll never be able to replicate by looking at a screen. And at the end of the day, when someone receives your product in their hands, they're going to be touching it with their hands. They're not going to just be looking at it. So, those things I think are probably the most valuable pieces of advice for people looking to get into design. I think for working industrial designers, like if you're trying to follow in my footsteps, not that I would recommend that because I think everyone has their own path. And I think the key, what I would recommend is taking time to think about what kind of life and career you want. And that's really what led me to the path that I'm on now. And that's still leading me to try different things and experiment with what I can do with this skill set that I've developed. It's taking the time to stop stop the treadmill, like stop the day to day, like just deadlines and getting things done and like taking care of clients, taking time to like really think about like what is it that I want to do? What do I want my career to look like? And it doesn't have to be exactly what someone else is doing. It doesn't have to be a set path of like you join a company and then you climb a corporate ladder, you get a promotion, you switch jobs every 2 years until you're like VP of design or whatever. There's really so many things you can do with the skill set of industrial design. So I would say the thing that I would recommend that working designers do is just take time out to think about how they want their careers to go. Because I think a lot of designers also are workaholics and they just are working all the time. And I was certainly in phases of my career, I was certainly doing the same thing. And I wish I had taken more time to like think more critically about like how to design my life and my career. And I'm glad that over the last few years, I've done that and been able to kind of steer myself in a direction that I think is exciting and takes advantage of everything that I've done before and is fun. I think I'm having fun um, on most days. There's still days that are hard, and being independent certainly makes some things a little bit harder, but overall, I think it's it's a great it's a great direction that I've stumbled onto, and I'm still learning what works for me. So so yeah, take that time to really think about what you want.
Valuable advice. And so for folks that want to follow your adventures online, where should they go?
So you can always find me on LinkedIn, and I think my profile is linkedin.com/Anson.design. You just spell it out. You can also subscribe to my newsletter at www.designthings.blog. And there I write every week a thought about design and business and creativity. And I just try to share insights from my own journeys that people can possibly learn from. You can also go to my portfolio website at www.anson, so ANSON dot design. It's not .com. I couldn't get that. It's Anson dot design, and you can see the kind of work that I've done there before, and Otherwise, yeah, those are the places you can find me. And I always appreciate it when people give me a shout on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat with people and connect.
And we'll also have links to all of them in the show notes. So check out the show notes to go directly to them. Anson, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Dan. That was a really fun conversation.